Good morning and good afternoon for some folks. I'm Christy White and I also have Jeff Welton here with me, and we're here to talk about the VS300LP, give you an overview of the transmitter and also a live demo today. And we don't have any April Fool's jokes for you today, sorry. So as I said, we'll do an overview here to go over some of the advanced features, and then Jeff's also going to talk about some of the other equipment besides the transmitter that you'll need to look at. Do you want to say hello, Jeff?
Jeff says hi.
All right, so there is a question bar to the side there, so I'll just ask if you have any questions, type them in, and then we'll get to them at the end if we can. And if not, I will respond to every question, and I will update our FAQ page on our LP page on the website if there's any good questions that we should share with everyone. So, LPFM challenge, we want to make every watt count. So there's a lot of different transmitters out there, and one of the things that I always say when people call and ask, well, what about this one, what about that one? You know, it's apples and oranges, so I think the best thing is just to think about what you need. Think about your audio performance, you know, think about creating your signature sound with your audio processing. Also know that you have limited engineering resources for some stations, so you want to leverage everything that you can with monitoring and logging and meters. And do you have backup audio? If your STL fails, are you off the air, or do you have another option? And what's in the box? So what's included, what's additional, and what kind of support are you going to get? Is it quick? Is it easy? Are there set hours? Is it 24/7? You know, these are all some things that you want to think about. You want to save time and money. So our VS300LP is a high performance box, really high specifications on it. We have a fully digital exciter. Everything is integrated. And we have a rich selection of audio inputs, so you can enable 4 audio sources at once with different presets. So that'll allow you to have, you'll see in the back here, there's USB ports. You can have your shoutcast, your icecast. You also have your left and right analog, AES, EBU, lots of options at the back. And we also have a new announcement, which is since January, our VS300 now operates on 110 volt AC, so you don't need a step-up transformer anymore. So that switching power supply inside can operate at 110 or 220. So that's going to save some folks either having to make some electrical upgrades or buying a step-up. We also offer the optional Orban Inside card, which is the optional DSP card. Mounts inside similar to the Orban 5500, and it works with all of the inputs except for the composite input. And you can control and monitor that through the Nautel AUI, which I'm going to get into and show you folks live in a couple of minutes. So this is our advanced user interface. You can control the transmitter from the front LCD screen. But this option gives you a little bit more control. It's really user-friendly. Also means that if you have an IP connection, you can access and control your transmitter from anywhere, even on your cell phone for most folks. And so rather than just showing you a picture, what I want to do is actually go into a live transmitter that we have in Quincy. So if you'll just bear with me for a second, we'll jump modes here. And here is an AUI that we have in Quincy. I'm just going to turn the RF on here. We're going to see it make some power. But what you'll notice is the welcome screen gives you a snapshot of your information. So what your power level is, your set point, reflected power, if your scheduler is on or off. You've got some meters. You can also see the green. Green is good. Yellow you should probably check out. Red is bad. Red means you're off the air. So at least it's a little intuitive, color-coded. Gives you lots of options. So the preset is what controls everything. So it tells you what your output power is, your frequency. It's really the brains of your transmitter. So as you can see, it's telling us our present setting is the shoutcast preset. But right now we're in current settings, so if we make any changes, it's not going to affect the preset right now. So we need to load, we can load that current preset, and we'll just make some changes so you can see how it affects things. So we have our main audio sources here. We can select, can enable SCAs, RDS. So I'm going to actually turn on our internal RDS here. You can see I've put in, it's only 8 characters, so Nautel Q is what I've put on there since this is our test transmitter in Quincy, Illinois. And then we can also set, enable or disable our Orban processor. And just going back to the main audio here, other settings. You can also say if there's a timeout loss, what you want to do. So this is where you would say, do you want to inhibit? Do you want to change presets? So this is where you could put a USB into the back of the transmitter and create a playlist, or you could switch to your shoutcast if you're also broadcasting on the internet. So we'll make this change. We've enabled the RDS, and I'm just going to save that, and I'm going to select that preset and activate it. And I just want everyone to look at the spectrum analyzer here, because you're going to notice now, if you didn't before, we can see that our RDS has been enabled here now. So this main screen, in addition to showing you these meters, if you go over into this section, you can see either a snapshot of your controller, and every time you see the blue screen there, it's actually refreshing and the transmitter's taking a new meter reading. So this can be really helpful to show you a snapshot of what's going on in your transmitter. You can also select and save what you want to see and save these meters so that every time you log in with that user, you see the 5 things that are the most important to you. So be that your VSWR or your reflected power, you can pick based on the user. You can do the same thing for the exciter, see a snapshot of what's going on. Another really helpful part of those meters is that if you go into the deeper user settings and you go into this critical parameters, you can ask the transmitter to capture the parameters. So it's going to capture your meters or capture your alarms, and then when you copy that, now it's copied and I can put that into a Word document, into an Excel file. But it means you can print that off, you can share it, can send it to Nautel if you have an issue and we ask you, can you go in and capture your alarms and send them to us? So it's a really great tool to be able to share information, especially if you have maybe not a full-time engineer and you need to send them some information before they make a trip to your transmitter site. You can help provide as much information before someone makes a trip. So what we also have here is, I mentioned our status buttons. So this is going to show us if we have any alarms. And we're lucky, we're in green status, so we don't have any alarms right now, but they would all show up in this list. We'd also let you know the level, so is it critical, is it not critical? Again, this is a really powerful tool to help you troubleshoot your transmitter. And so we also, this is where you would see your Orban inside card, so you can adjust your parameters. Now, I will say that the Orban inside card is, for whatever reason, not working in this transmitter, or I should say it's because there's an HD exciter and they need to make a change, but I have another transmitter pulled up here, actually an NV10 Lite, which is also in Quincy, that I can show you what the Orban inside processor looks like. So this is going to give you an idea of what you can adjust, but you can load, it comes set with a number of presets, so you can load one of the preloaded Orban, news talk. We could load that and then make individual adjustments and save those as your own sound and play around with that. You can also save that into a text file so you can remember what all of the adjustments are. If you wanted to maybe see, you know, does this affect my sound, but you can't remember what it was set to before, you know, if you were really organized, you could save that.
I'm not really organized. One other thing that's useful is that there is metering for the Orban audio levels as well.
Yeah, so you just click on this and you can get a quick at-a-glance look. So we'll go back into the VS transmitter here. And one of the things I wanted to talk about was the backup audio. So you can, as I mentioned already, you can have a shoutcast as your backup, but you can also plug a USB into the back of the transmitter and pull files from that. So we'll play a song one to the other, you know, there's no transition. But one of the really neat things is that if you have a playlist on there and you wanted to add new content, so for example, maybe the playlist is 6 months old and then all of a sudden something happens and your transmitter is now playing this USB file, but all of the content is 6 months old and you can't get to the transmitter site, but you have an internet connection. You can go into the Manage Files and you can browse on your computer and upload a song in real time. So it can be really convenient. I actually just loaded a couple of songs before we started, so you can refresh and then you can add that new content, you know, create a new playlist and activate that so that you have some new content. Again, but really organized people would update that all the time, right, Jeff? So there's just so much that you can do in the AUI that we really don't have time to go through everything. This is really just a quick snapshot of what the features are and what you can do. But afterwards, we have a couple more videos on more details of the features that are in the AUI, but also I'm always available to answer questions, and I've done a number of Join Me sessions to walk people through specific things that they have questions about. So any questions, please let me know. Anything you wanted to add, Jeff, in the AUI section?
I think that's the bulk of it. There are a few other things that we can do. I'll just touch on real fast. You've got programmable remote input outputs that you can set up for various features. One of the up-and-coming features, which will be down the road, but the cool thing about a software-defined system like this is that it can be done with a software upgrade in the field. One of the things that we'll be adding down the road is scrolling RDS, which we don't currently have. So it's just there's an amazing amount of power there, and it's worth taking a look and playing with it for a little while to learn some of the features.
And that's something too that I'll mention since Jeff said the software. Once you buy a transmitter, if we update the software, we tell you, we encourage you to download it, and if there are new features available, well, they're part of the new software and all comes with it. So we'll go back here to our PowerPoint. And so, back by popular demand, some of you may or may not be familiar with a promotion that we were running last year, but we are happy to announce that the LPFM promo is back. So if you buy the Nautel VS300 transmitter, you get the Orban Inside card. So it's a really great value. Saves you some money on having to buy an external processor, and it comes together. So Orban Inside and the transmitter for the price of just the transmitter. Also comes with our 4-year warranty, the AUI that you just saw, everything is included.
One thing should add to that, the internal Orban processor has the added benefit of giving you the ability to process the audio on your USB stick, which you wouldn't have with an external processor.
Yes, that is true. All right, well, I'm going to throw this over to Jeff because we wanted to also talk about some of the other equipment. I mean, it's not just the transmitter. So what else do you need, Jeff?
So we were looking at this primarily. We didn't deal so much with the studio end. We're looking more at transmitter site and facilities. Now, of course, in a lot of cases, the site and the studio will be co-located, and that's fine. So we want to talk a little bit about codecs, EAS, UPSs and surge protection, antenna and cables and wiring. What we're trying to do is cover the most common questions we tend to get from our newly licensed LPFM customers who may not have a whole lot of radio experience. So talking about codecs, one of the best ways these days to get the audio from your studio to your transmitter, even if they're in the same building, is with a audio over IP configuration where you only run one Cat6 cable or Cat5e. It's a network connection, so you can run it on your in-house network. It gives you the ability to access the transmitter AUI, and it gives you the ability to transport the audio. There's several different versions of codec out there. Depending on the budget, you could go from the top end with Telos and APT down to the lower budget, the barracks units. Some are better than others, but the only time you really need it is if you're doing an audio over IP stream. And now we wait. There we go. There we go. EAS is something else, and at this point, the EAS unit basically inserts any emergency alert that it receives into your audio chain. The EAS unit is required for FCC compliance. Currently, they must be CAP capable, so Common Alerting Protocol. The unique thing about this is that the CAP protocol is an IP-based protocol, so the EAS unit does need to be located at a point where you've got IP connectivity. And if you don't have that at your transmitter end, it may need to be at your studio. And for the most part, it's easier to put it at the studio anyway, but again, that'll depend. I've done several hundred installs over the years, and I don't think I've seen too many that were the same. Surge protection. Now, we've only got half an hour. Anybody who's heard me talk will know that I can stand here and talk for 45 minutes about surge protection and not even start to cover it. So I really did work hard to limit myself to just putting the one slide in and hitting the high points. Definitely the first thing you need is an MOV surge protector of some sort. We sell one. There are others, LEA, Control Concepts. There are several manufacturers out there that make them. Any MOV device that will connect between ground and your AC line will be a good start. You connect it as close as possible to your main electrical entrance, and that gives you the ability to bypass the surges around your equipment between your antenna or your tower rather, and your AC power entrance. The next thing you see on the list is ferrite toroids, and ferrite toroids are a little magical device, I call them. It's just a ring of carbon and iron. It goes over any wire where you've got a feed and return. So like a coax, an AC cable, you can put them on audio lines, remote control lines. If you've got a discrete STL, an RF-based STL, put it on your STL antenna. Anything external that has a power cord, put it on the power cords. Ferrites are reasonably cheap, and they're an excellent, excellent source of surge protection. So if you get a surge on either the center conductor or the shield of your coax, then they'll help to eliminate that or reduce it and cut down the chance of damaging your equipment. Not just the transmitter, as I said, you could put them on audio processor power cords if you don't have the Orban option, STLs, anything. Grounding is critical, absolutely. What we reference or what we tend to push is called common point grounding or star grounding, where you establish one ground reference for your facility and then tie everything individually to that ground reference, so you don't have a daisy chain where you go from one piece of equipment to another piece to another piece to another piece and then back to the beginning, because that ultimately creates a loop. We'll get circulating currents, we'll get ground loops, and we lose control over the ability to sort of steer where the lightning energy or where any surge energy goes. We do have a good reference on our website for it. I included the link here, but to be brutally honest, instead of writing this down, just go to our website, click on resources and white papers. It's under there. You may have to scroll down a bit. I think it's one of the earliest papers on the website. There's that one, and then there's another one about radio transmitter stations in general that covers ferrites and several other things. Cables and wiring are critical, and this one, especially with relation to coax cable. I get this call a lot. Somebody will call me and say, we've got our LP license, and we know what antenna we're putting up, and we want this transmitter, and it needs to run this power, but they haven't considered the fact that there's a lot of loss in a coax cable. For example, a half-inch coax cable has an efficiency of about 56%, so you drop a lot of power through it. Okay, so that needs to be considered and factored in. You're going to need, if you're running an audio over IP or any kind of network, you're going to need to allow for Cat6 cable. Audio cable, if you're running a separate audio stream, should be shielded, things like that. If you're running a conventional remote control, that'll need to be wired in. So these things all need to be done in the planning stage. You can sort of get a rough idea of what types of cable, what lengths, and a rough guess on how much time it's going to take them in, because if you're paying a contract engineer by the hour, you can get a reasonable estimate of what it's going to cost you to hook all this stuff up. And antennas. I had a call just yesterday, as a matter of fact, from a guy who says, we've got our LP license, we're getting this transmitter, VS300 in this case, and we're getting ready to get the antenna. We don't know whether it's going to be a 1-bay or a 2-bay. Well, the issue is that antennas have gain. And a 1-bay antenna's got a gain of half, so for example, if you've got 100 watts at 100 feet for an LPFM, then a 1-bay antenna will require over 200 watts to drive it, plus whatever the line loss is through the coax. So it's really critical, again, to know the coax length and to have a rough idea of your antenna configuration. Now, a 300-watt transmitter will suit just about every LPFM requirement out there, because you're going to be within a couple of hundred feet of your antenna in almost every conceivable situation. But it's still really good to have that information. We have a spreadsheet that I've shown on the screen here where we can plug in that information and get you the exact transmitter power you're going to require to drive the antenna configuration. I mean, this spreadsheet's a little overkill. We use it in-house for everything, including HD radio stuff, multiple antenna configurations. So, you know, give us a holler and we can certainly walk you through all that.
So that's all. We, gave you a little bit of an overview of the VS300LP. Jeff has talked about some of the other equipment, and, get your transmitter. It's plug and play. You've got the headroom, that Jeff was talking about. You need to figure out how many watts do you really need to get your 100 or 10 watts that your license is for. It's certified by the FCC under Part 73 for LPFM use, which you do need a certified LP transmitter. And as I mentioned with the deal, $5,300, there is an extra zero there, will get you the transmitter and the Orban Inside card.
$53,000, April Fools.
Yeah, there we go. There's our April Fool's joke, and we didn't even know it. So I'm just going to go to questions now here, because somehow Jeff and I have actually finished in the time we discussed, which almost never happens. All right, so the first question is it possible for an experienced broadcast tech to replace the final MOSFET and power supply in the field in case of failure?
The power supply is pretty easy. I've done it myself at a trade show once. So you're pulling off the bottom cover of the transmitter, or the top cover of the transmitter, sorry. There is a little surround bracket around the power supply that you take off, 4 screws there, and then the power supply just pops right out. It's modular, it's easy to do. The final MOSFET's a little more challenging in the field. However, the amplifier is on a pallet, so it's easier to replace the entire pallet in the field. And to be brutally honest, the price difference between the pallet and the amplifier transistor itself is pretty minimal, so it's easier just to do the pallet. It's 4 solder connections and 6 screws, and you're done. Well, look, I drew the next one too. The EQ impulse response, Christy, if you can open up the AUI screen again. We'll just minimize, there we go. There are several, I'm going to get you to X that actually.
You want me to exit?
Yeah,
Okay.
and then hit that. There are several different meters that you can look here. There's EQ frequency response, impulse response, filter delay, there's AM to AM correction, AM to PM correction, and power distribution. These are used in various situations for linearizing the transmitter for HD, among other things. For the bulk of it, in normal field use, you wouldn't necessarily need these. If you were running into a situation where you had a problem, there might be times when our tech support would ask to see a snapshot of that meter. So we provide it all in there just to make it easier for us to troubleshoot more than anything.
So also on the meters, how to switch from the RF spectrum to see the audio spectrum? So again, we can change what your measurement source is here. So right now we have it in MPX view. We can see the transmitter output. You can also see here's the FCC mask as well. Okay, so there is a question about us inferring that we push software updates to the users. So I do know that when we have a software update, there is an email that goes out to tell users, but you have to be opted in through customer service. I believe, Jeff, you can correct that if I'm wrong.
Sort of yes, sort of no.
It also comes out in the Waves newsletter too, though. So if you sign up for Waves, you'll hear about
we
software.
Don't physically see pushing software the way Rod's asking is actually we push the software into the transmitter, and we do not do that.
Oh, okay.
We do recommend or push you to keep the latest software installed. There is a feature that we do have on the website called Update Manager, where you can install a little it's just a little app that runs in the background on your PC. You tell it what TGZ file or what software version you're running on what level of equipment you've got, whether it's VS, NV, Lite, GB, or whatever. And then if there's ever an update, you will get a little pop-up on your computer as soon as we send the release that says, hey, Nautel's just issued new software for this transmitter. So that's a feature that you can access right directly off our website under the support tab.
There's also another question here as to if the webinar will be available for later review, and yes, it will be posted within 24 hours on our website. Also, if you have an existing VS300 transmitter, there's a question on if you can change the power supply. It is field upgradable. You do have to purchase the new power supply, but it is fairly quick and easy fix.
Yeah, the only caveat to it is making sure that you're running version 4.1.3 or later of the software. We are going to do a little field instruction set for that. We missed one question I saw up there by Brian. Yeah, how long until scrolling RDS, and will it come to all VS series transmitters? The short answer is yes, it will when it's released. It will be a while yet. We have it on the GB series now. The next one in the queue for this is, I think, in VLT for the next update. VS will be that. The rough estimate I've got is this year, but I'd put it near the end of this year. So thanks for that question, Brian.
Is the modulation reporting accurate, or should we invest in an external monitor to satisfy the FCC requirements? So I can speak to that. I was looking up the compliance on that just the other day, and it's actually two different ways. So you can either use an external monitor, or you can, based on what the calculations you get from the AUI, it's a mathematical calculation is all you need to do.
So in short, it is accurate. Now keep in mind that the modulation as displayed on the transmitter will include your RDS and your pilot injection levels as well. So if you've got pilot turned on, for example, at 9% with no audio, you're going to see 9% on the mod monitor on the transmitter. Whereas an external mod monitor, most of them will remove the pilot and just give you the actual audio level.
Okay, so there's a question here from Kevin asking about the ability of the transmitter to collect or log remote control settings.
That's remote control readings. I'm assuming, and I'm guessing here, Kevin, but I'm assuming you're talking about like logging meter readings on a scheduled basis rather than having an operator write them down every couple, 3 hours. And at this point it doesn't, although you can physically log into the transmitter and store the meters as Christy showed earlier, or you can access the logs at any point to get a chronological history of any alarms or failure type situations.
And the logs, I'll actually quickly just show this here. Well, I guess because we don't have, there's status on this transmitter. But these won't clear until you clear them. So you have to reset the settings before it'll tell you, you know, and your logs here, you can go into your log manager and you can copy those logs by, you know, you can filter by date, so you can capture a certain date, copy that to your clipboard, save that. So there's lots of different options. You have to manually delete them. There's a lot of options, but unfortunately, as you suggest, there's no automated collection of that data. It's user collection.
Okay, next one up, is it okay to run FM modulation close to 100%? That is what it says. I got small type here and I got old eyes, so I'm kind of craning to reach the screen. But the short answer is yes. You can run your FM modulation totally up to 100%. It's 75 kilohertz of deviation at 100%. If you're running SCAs, subcarrier authorizations, you can actually add half of the the SCA injection level as additional mods. So like 2 SCAs at 5% each, you could run another 5% modulation.
Okay, so the next question here from Bruce is, I was hoping to enclose the VS300 in a locked cabinet, but notice you recommend 2-foot clearance in front and back. How important is this spacing?
That is a wide open question. The clearances are primarily held over from all of our rack-built transmitters where you need to be able to get to the front to actually read things. I've got several VSs in locked cabinets. The big caveat is making sure, for example, if you lock a VS in a totally sealed iron box or steel box and put it out in the Arizona sunshine, you're probably going to have some temperature issues in the middle of summer. In a transmitter room, having it in a rack with a locked front and back door is not an issue at all. You may need some air grates or some louvers on your doors in order to let air flow through, but that'd be the only thing to consider at all.
So there's another question here about air intake, concerned about accessibility to your air intake since it's on the left side and not front or back. Is there a good way to keep air intake clean? Does it have a filter? There is a filter.
Yeah, there's a 34 per inch foam filter under a retainer. So the foam media is pretty easily obtained from almost any air conditioning place. Grainger carries it in the U.S. I'm not sure about Canada. Home Depot would be where I'd probably look first. But Absolutely, the filter is changeable. And remember that at 60% efficiency almost on the VS300, at 300 watts out, the heat dissipation on this thing is pretty minimal. I've seen them with those air filters 100% totally clogged, and the transmitter was still running. So although it's nice to keep them clean, and you know, the transmitter, remember, comes on rack slides. They're supplied with it. So if you've got it mounted in a rack, you can slide it forward and hit that filter with a shop vac in no time flat.
Email of alarms possible. Yes, it is possible. I will show that quickly here as well. In user settings, email or notification, sorry. So if you can add, you know, the name, the recipient, and you can choose. So I can go into the controller and say, I want to know every time. Oh, let's see. There's a high PSWR alarm and it shuts down the transmitter. I want the transmitter to send me an email on that. So yes, you can do that. Okay, another question about can the transmitter be run inside an uncooled shelter? This is a Central Coast near ocean site. Depends.
Well, it's the same situation, Chris. If you're looking at, I mean, the transmitter's got a 0 to 50 Celsius ambient spec, so 32 to about 118, 120 degrees roughly Fahrenheit. If you've got some louvers, like screen louvers on your shelter to let airflow through, I mean, the free air through there is going to keep it cool for the bulk of it. One of the things we've done on some of our navigational beacons that are installed in that situation is mount an offset aluminum plate about 2-3 inches above the shelter to act as a sun shield, and it will tend to absorb most of the heat from the sun, and then the actual cabinet itself will stay quite a bit cooler. So that might be something you want to consider in that kind of situation.
We also have a follow-up question on clearance, and can the front handles be easily removed? I've never seen one without the handles.
Easily removed is relative. They can be removed, but I sure wouldn't say it was easy. If you had an offset screwdriver, you could do it. It's pretty tedious, but it can be done. Let's see, stick out too far for our front cover. Yeah, I'll dig into that a little bit, Bruce, and I'll get Christy's jotting a note now, and we'll get back to you directly on that one.
Without the Orban card, does the VS have an internal stereo generator, and does the Nautel stereo generator have a composite limiting function? So yes, without the Orban card, it does have an internal stereo generator, and I will pull up.
I can answer the other one. The answer is
Yeah, I was going to say it's no. Here is what you can control in the other settings.
Yeah.
Is your hard limiter, your AGC.
And the two slope, and they are rudimentary. They're there purely to keep it legal, but no, we don't do any composite limiting in the transmitter itself. If you're feeding a composite feed, then you're going to be using the composite stereo generation and composite clipping in your processor anyway.
And we have a question from Marco. Can you have more than one email address listed? Yes, you can have multiple recipients of the same set of alarms set up.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the limit is on number of recipients. You can set up to 50 different notifications, and each one of them can have multiple recipients. So I don't remember the character to separate the email addresses, whether it's a comma or a semicolon, but one of the two.
I will look into that. And our last question out from Chris, salty, humid air concerns too.
Yeah, that's I'm going to say that's an East Coast thing, especially when you get down in the South. That is always going to be a concern. You sort of have to balance. I mean, one of the things we've done for one of the sites we deal with, we found this tiny little, and I'll see if I can get you the information on it, Chris. It's a tiny little air conditioner that we mount right in the rack to condition the air coming in so that we don't have to deal with stuff like that.
And our final question is, if the Orban is enabled, do you recommend not using the hard limiter and AGC limiter?
I'll answer that because I've been here and done this a few times on setting these up in the field, and the short answer is if you've got any external processor or the internal Orban, I recommend not using the hard limiter. Especially, well, the hard limiter is just a brick wall clipper. It's going to chop your audio. It's there, like I say, you set a limit and it says you will not go above this limit no matter what. The AGC limiter and the transmitter is meant to keep you legal, but the challenge is that it is a fast release variable decay, and it does pump if you're hitting it aggressively. So yeah, definitely if I had any kind of external processor at all, I wouldn't be using the internal limiters.
Okay, well that seems to be all of the questions. And so learn more, stay in touch. There's just a link here. Our Nautel Waves newsletter will tell you tips and tricks about software. And also there's webinars. There are support webinars as well on our website. So this will tell you some quick tips, you know, how to change your preset. We're always updating that, so it's also a good thing to look at, and our YouTube page. So thank you for taking your time to join us today. And if anyone's coming up to the NAB, both Jeff and I will be there.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.